everybody. Welcome to the Rise Together podcast. Today, we're going to have some fun. I hope that you've been listening and enjoying. As you know, we are available on Apple, iTunes, as well as SoundCloud and so many other areas, YouTube, Facebook. Find the way you want to hear this podcast, whether that's a video or whether you just want to listen to it on the audio. Make sure you do that. But today, special guest. And this is kind of exciting for me. This is Patrick Harnish, and Patrick actually is our Market HR, Human Resources. He's going to tell us all about that, what that looks like for Market 356. Patrick was an individual that came alongside me early on and actually became my mentor. There aren't a lot of people that have the contact you do at some of the best moments and even some of the worst moments in associates world because of the things that you deal with. So you're going to have an interesting take. So I'm really excited about today. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. As your mentor, I was starting to feel neglected, but I'm glad you finally made time for me.
It got kind of crazy for a while there, but here we are. We're here now.
Glad to be here.
And excited that you're on the show. Patrick, like I said, is involved in so many things, but let's have you tell us kind of your Walmart story, where you came from, how you landed in Market HR.
One of the things I do now is I talk to my personnel coordinators and training coordinators a lot about rehires, right? And really screening our candidates and looking closely at people who've worked for us in the past. Well, myself personally, I've worked for Walmart 4 times. So I am lucky, as kind of rigorous as we are now, to have had that opportunity 4 times. So Walmart was one of my first jobs when I was 16, 17. I don't remember for sure. It was either first or second job. I was a cashier, and I had a terrible work ethic. I was lazy. I always wanted to get assigned. Back then they had sidewalk sales, so I'd want to get the sidewalk sale because I could go out there and I'd slip under the radar, and I could get a lawn chair and a Mountain Dew. There's a pop machine out there, so I could just sit there and be lazy and just hang out my whole shift. So I was terrible. I didn't get fired, but I did eventually quit, and I went to college. Again, went to work at Walmart. So as a cashier again, for whatever reason, my work ethic improved a little bit. So I did a pretty good job. Someone came over and saw me from the produce department, recruited me over there, so I went to produce. And I started out pretty good, but there was the wrong crowd over there. So before long, I found myself getting back in those old habits. Throwing things in the cooler and taking longer breaks than I should have, and hanging out with the wrong crowd, and I became the wrong crowd. So again, fell back into some disappointing habits. Eventually didn't get fired, but eventually quit. Went back home, transferred colleges. Again, where do you think I went to work?
Walmart.
At Walmart. So overnight produce, was at a pretty tough store. My best friend's dad, he's a really old school guy. He's tough, and I did not want to disappoint him. So again, there's a pattern here.
Interesting.
I keep getting a little bit better each time. So I worked pretty hard. I would set the produce department overnight, and it had to look like a magazine when you looked at the wet wall. So worked really hard to do that. And I was a pretty good associate, but still the things going on outside in life were more important to me than work.
Okay.
So eventually I tried to do a transfer at one point, and it fell through, so I just ended up quitting. So from there, I went on. I worked at a lot of different companies. I won't name, tried to do my own company, had my own business, had highs, had lows. But at the end of the day, I found myself in, I would call it a dead-end job. I was doing overnight security. I had no path to progress. So I can remember sitting there one night on my shift overnight thinking, I've worked at Walmart multiple times, and I can remember seeing all these people, peers, people I went to high school with, friends who were not like me. They were doing a good job, and they were putting in effort, and they were making something of themselves. So I said to myself, I'm going to try to go back one more time, and it's going to be different this time. So that's what I did. I got an opportunity on a truck crew, and I kept my other job. So I'd work overnight security, come home, sleep for a couple hours. Then I'd go into the truck crew, unload. They called it ICS back then. So unload trucks, come home, sleep for an hour, go back. So, but eventually, from the moment I went in there, I told the management team, I want your job. I want to do what you're doing. I'll give 110%, build me, develop me, and they did that. So before long, I got an opportunity to be the produce lead. And then I got an opportunity to run the shop in TLE. And then I can remember the day coming in, getting ready to open the shop, check my email, and saw my job offer, and tears welled up in my eyes. And got that opportunity, and that's been my story from there. I got to be an assistant, a store manager. This role I'm in now, I've got to work in different areas of the country, different states, all kinds of different experiences, and I love to tell that story to new associates coming in at a welcome to Walmart or an orientation, because I want them to know that Walmart is such a unique place of opportunity. And of all the places I've worked, I just don't see that. There's something in the culture here where if you come in and you put in the work, whether you have the natural skills or you got to work at them, Walmart affords you all the opportunities to succeed and develop yourself and be successful.
That's outstanding. I mean, and what's your encouragement to the management? What do we look for to give that person another shot?
The encouragement that we try to build in our market is just the conversation around that applicant. So it's not that because they've worked here 2 times, 3 times, 4 times that it's ever an absolute no, or that it's never an absolute yes, but it's about the conversation, that dialogue that the personnel coordinator has with that applicant, or the training coordinator, and the impression they make on them, and what are their career goals, why are they coming back, what do they want to do. Is the assistant who's hiring him, what's his opinion, her opinion, what's the store manager's opinion. So we just try to have that open dialogue before we say, yeah, let's bring this person in, let's interview them, and then maybe or maybe not give them a job offer.
Which is a great plea to our management to say, hire right?
Yeah.
Go through the steps. It's important. Going back to your story, you said a friend's father that you didn't want to let down.
Yep.
What was it about that? What were the characteristics of him that you didn't want to let down, and why did he have that kind of impact on your life?
You meet people in life who teach you about work ethic and what it means to work hard. And my father was one of those individuals, but you don't always listen to your father.
Sure.
Right? So, as I said, my best friend, his dad, I'd be over at his house. I would spend time with this individual and got to see that firsthand, and he's somebody who just ended up influencing me. So there's a matter of pride. I don't want to go to work and be the lazy guy or do a poor job, and then I'm going to see this guy a few nights later at his house and know that he's thinking of me as, it's not a hard worker. I don't want that, So there's just a sense of not wanting to let that person down, but also starting at that young age to understand what it means to work hard and why that's valuable and why that's a thing of pride if you can come in and do a good job.
Sure. And there's a personal decision that has to be made, right, on our side, that I have to care enough to make sure that I live and develop some values in my life, live in a way that honors other things. But if you're somebody that already has those convictions and passions, then what about being the second person, and that being the dad? Mm-hmm. What are you doing to influence other people around you, your peers, to have positive impact at the store, to have an encouragement in their life as fathers, as wives, as brothers, sisters, as just employees in general, to have that ethic? I mean, there's 2 people in this conversation that it's going to be really important. What are the values that you personally have? And if you've established great values, what are you doing to lead others in that direction? Yeah. So
sometimes you're having a big influence on somebody and you don't even realize it. That's probably the curse of being a parent too. Is you're making a much bigger impact than you know. It just sometimes it catches up later in life.
Talk to us about some leadership lessons you picked up along the way. Something that stands out when you think about your time. I mean, you've given us some life lessons. Mm-hmm. What are some leadership lessons you've learned as a store manager, as an assistant manager? You've seen a lot of different faces come and go.
Probably the biggest thing I've learned about leadership is that it comes in all different shapes and sizes and styles. And if I think back to my own story, for instance, I think a lot of the people in my youth who I would have thought of as a good leader weren't necessarily good leaders. They were just maybe enablers, allowing me to continue the bad habits I had, to continue some of those poor characteristics that I displayed as an associate. And then it was the people who were harder on me, people who I thought maybe at the time were making my life miserable, who were really the ones who were showing the integrity and the honesty and the genuineness to make me a better associate and a better person. So as I've gone around and traveled and worked for all kinds of different phenomenal leaders, I've had those who are super intense and overly intense, and those who are more laid back and just kind of give you the parameters and let you go. But I think it's those core characteristics of honesty and integrity and being really devoted to the team. Not about chasing the dollar or chasing the glory, or it's about this is my team here. This is our goal. This is where I want to get us, and helping move that team, whatever that means. If that's the individual, that's where they get their joy and their fulfillment. I think that's when you see real leadership, whatever their style. Now, Tony Romo is kind of my sports hero, my sports idol. So if you think about the greatest quarterbacks in Cowboy history, Tony Romo has almost all the records, right? He's at the top of all the stats charts, but he doesn't have the ring.
Sure.
So he's always going to be overlooked compared to Aikman's and the Staubachs or whoever. But he was elite level. He was up there with the greatest of all time. And towards the end of his career, when it was winding down, he's in his last few years. He had a great team around him. Going into the season, poised to maybe get that ring. Had gotten real close in the past couple years, and this was going to be the year. And he's a little bit injury prone, which is why everybody gives him a hard time. So
Sure.
Going into that season, he gets an injury, and he's going to miss the majority of the season. So this young man takes over named Dak Prescott, and all he's got to do is hold it together until Tony comes back. But as we all know, he does a little bit more than that, doesn't
Sure.
he? So he just can't find a way to lose. Continues to win games, and Jerry Jones continues to say, "This is Tony's team. This is Tony's team. This is Tony's team." But at some point, everybody had to face the fact that, man, you can't stop what's going on here. This is too special. And for Tony, he was probably looking at this was his only opportunity to cement that legacy, to have all the stats, to win the Super Bowl. But he understands what the team needs, and he comes forward very publicly and says, "This is Dak's team. He's earned that right. I've been out. He's done something special. I should be the backup quarterback, not the starting quarterback." And that, to me, just when I think about leadership and team, I always think of that moment. And could I have stood up there and been that person who was big enough to say that, and maybe squander my legacy because my real interest was moving the team forward. So,
Man, what a great lesson there. One lesson I wanted to make sure I wanted to hit on was when you were a store manager, you told me a story because you decided one day to put your actual cell phone on every register in your store. And the response to that I thought was real intriguing.
to go back to leadership, I think something very important that I learned from some great leaders along the way is to give people more credit than we sometimes do, and that could be associates or customers. If you've ever been an overnight assistant manager, sometimes the workload ahead of you for the night can be just like ginormous, and you think in your mind, there's no way to get this done. And I think at times I was taught with some bad leadership, don't give the true picture of what the night looks like. Just go into it and make the plan. Don't really tell people how bad it is. But other leaders challenge that idea with me, like, tell them the truth. Tell them you need everybody to move forward as a team and to pull together, and this is a big night. So I've kind of carried that with me, and I think sometimes we do that with customers too. When we were really working to improve our CFF at the time in my store, and had kind of hit a wall, felt like we were doing everything we could do to give a good experience, and I couldn't figure out what the missing piece was. So I said, well, I'm just going to put my number up there, and I'm going to put my face and give anybody that wants to an opportunity to call me. And if it's 3 a.m. and something's wrong at the store, I may need my beauty sleep, but I need to know, right? It's still my responsibility. Sure. So a lot of people cringed when I decided to do that, because, I plastered it everywhere. It probably looked a little tacky, but everybody kind of cringed, like, oh, you're going to get a lot, that's going to be a bad deal. But it really wasn't. There's just a few calls over time where I needed to help a customer, and that gave me the opportunity to identify something that was wrong and help them. A couple pranks, but nothing ever major. Put my money where my mouth is, or customers could see it and identify that, hey, this individual actually cares, and he's saying I can call him at home if I have a problem and I want to. And I think sometimes just knowing that someone's there and has that kind of commitment to give a good experience means something. And the other part, I think, is just just because you put your name and number out doesn't mean everybody's going to abuse it, and that's the initial reaction. Absolutely.
Give people the credit. Give them the credit that they very well might respond a little bit differently than what you anticipate. So many times we walk into it doom and gloom, and where we realize it's not. Yep. Be positive and look for ways for people to win. And the outcome pretty much goes pretty well most of the time.
And we learn that lesson time and time again when we have innovations and things we add to the experience. And a lot of times we push back on them at first and think they won't be successful. if you give them a chance, customers will give them a chance, and they do. They end up helping everybody.
I mean, case in point, we're in the middle of self-checkouts right now.
There you go.
And so there's been some strong resistance, some misunderstanding of what they are and what they're for. But the reality is we try to find ways for customers to be able to come in, shop, get out as quickly as possible. It's one of our passions. It's one of the things that we want to make happen for customers, and it was a great option to do that. It also allowed us to do some other things in the store, providing services like online grocery pickup, OGP. And of course, we still have registers, and so that's going to be something that will probably always will be a part of our DNA, but we want to give, again, customers opportunities to do things in different ways.
Sure.
And there's been some resistance on the front end of it, but at the same time, talk to some other folks, and there's some really strong, I love it. Patrick, what does the Spark mean to you?
Spark to me is the brand of our culture. It's no different than when we had the happy face. It just represents something I think that's inherent about our company and that's extremely unique. And I can remember when I was a little kid, I didn't want to go to Toys R Us when we went shopping, we went toy shopping. I wanted to go to Walmart. Just like my kids want to go to Walmart today. There's just something special about this place. And I think that's why I kept coming back to the company time and time again. I saw I maybe couldn't identify it when I was young and immature. I saw that there was something different about here, and I saw that this was a company that rewarded good behavior and hard work. And I saw that there was a family environment, a place where you could be a team. And I think that's what our brand represents to me. It's our culture.
So that's a great wrap up for our time together. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.